They called me El Patrón, the Lord. Forget everything you know about billionaires. I didn't build a tech company in a garage. I built an empire on corpses and white powder that was worth more than the economy of many countries. At my peak, I didn't count my money. I weighed it on industrial scales because I was making $60 million a day. Forbes magazine said I was the 7th richest man on the planet, but they didn't know the half of it. I had so much cash stockpiled in basements that rats ate $2 billion of my fortune every single year, and I didn't even care. I spent $2,500 a month just buying rubber bands to hold my stacks of bills together, and one night, while on the run, I burned $2 million in a campfire just to keep my daughter warm. And don't let the numbers fool you. I controlled 80% of all the cocaine in the world and changed an entire country's constitution just to avoid stepping inside an American jail cell. I flew hippos from Africa to my garden. I was the man who built entire neighborhoods for the poor, but I was also the monster who blew up a commercial airliner in midair, killing 110 innocent people just to try and eliminate a single enemy. I was Robin Hood and the devil in the same skin. I was Pablo Escobar, and this is my story of how I had the world in the palm of my hand before drowning in my own blood. To understand who I became, to comprehend how one man can reach the power to challenge governments and put the world on high alert, you first need to understand where I came from. You need to smell the damp earth of Antioquia and taste the bitterness of poverty that hung over Colombia in the 40s and 50s. I wasn't born a monster, nor was I born a king. I was born on December 1st, 1949, in Rionegro, a small village less than an hour from Medellín. The Colombia of my childhood was no tropical paradise. It was a slaughterhouse. We lived through the period that historians simply call La Violencia. Liberals and conservatives killed each other in the fields with machetes, cutting off heads as if they were cattle. Blood flowed down the mountains. It was in this scenario of chaos and survival that I took my first steps. I grew up seeing that the law didn't protect anyone. The law was just a tool for the powerful to oppress the weak. If you wanted to survive, you needed to be smarter, faster, and eventually crueler than the others. My parents, Abel de Jesus Escobar Echeverri and Hermilda Gaviria, were hard-working people. My father was a peasant, a farm manager, an honest man, but passive. I looked at him with his calloused hands and tired eyes, and felt a deep love, but also a terrible fear. The fear of being like him, the fear of working from sunrise to sunset and dying, leaving nothing behind but debts and sweat. My mother, Hermilda, was different. She was a teacher, a woman of grit, ambitious, tough. She was the one who put fire in my veins. She told me, "Pablo, you were born for great things. Don't let anyone step on you." She taught me that cunning was worth more than brute force. We moved to Envigado when I was still young. Envigado was a working-class suburb neighboring Medellín. There, social inequality wasn't a statistic. It was a slap in the face every day. I saw the industrialists' mansions, the imported cars, the linen clothes, and then I looked at my worn-out shoes. I swore to myself, still a boy, that one day I wouldn't just have that, but I would have more than all of them put together. At school, at Liceo Lucrecio Jaramillo Vélez, I wasn't the most disciplined student, but I was a natural leader. My classmates followed me. I was already wheeling and dealing, swapping comic books, selling exam answers. I organized schemes. They called me El Doctor, or said I would be president, and I replied, with the seriousness of a prophet, "I will be president of Colombia, and if not, I'll be the richest bandit this country has ever seen." Little did I know I would try to be both. My criminal career didn't start with cocaine. It started with necessity and opportunity. Rumor has it I stole tombstones from cemeteries, sanded off the names and resold them. Some deny it, but the truth is, in those times, morality was a luxury I couldn't afford. If the dead didn't need the marble anymore, the living needed the money. But that was small time. I wanted more. I began to understand that the real money was in what the government prohibited. Where there was a ban, there was an opportunity for massive profit. I entered the world of contraband. Marlboro cigarettes, stereos, home appliances. Those were the years of the Marlboro Wars. I drove old trucks down dirt roads, bribing cops, learning the routes, feeling the adrenaline of slipping through unnoticed. That was where I learned my most valuable lesson. The philosophy that would rule my entire future empire. Plata or plomo, silver or lead. You offer the officer the silver, the bribe, the chance to feed his family. If he accepts, he's your friend. If he refuses, if he tries to be a hero, he gets the lead. It's a simple, brutal and efficient choice, and believe me, almost everyone chose the silver. But smuggling cigarettes and stealing cars, yes, I stole plenty of cars too, stripped down Renault 4s, sold the parts, was still manual labor. I had cash in my pocket, bought better clothes, helped my mother, but I wasn't El Patrón yet. I was just a smart thug from Envigado. Until in the mid-1970s, destiny changed color. It turned white. I started hearing rumors about a base paste coming from Peru and Bolivia. The gringos up north were starting to develop an insatiable appetite for a stimulant powder. Marijuana was for hippies, bulky, smelled strong, hard to hide. But cocaine was pure alchemy. A kilo of paste cost peanuts in the Andes. Processed in labs in the Colombian jungle and put on the streets of Miami, that same kilo was worth tens of thousands of dollars. The profit margin wasn't 100% or 200%. It was 5,000%, 10,000%. When I ran the numbers for the first time, my head spun. That wasn't a business, it was printing money. I made the first trips myself. I went to Peru and Ecuador. I bought the paste, hid it in truck tires under the seats. In the beginning, it was kilos, 10, 20 kilos. I remember the feeling of crossing the border with that load. It wasn't fear, it was power. I knew I was carrying my family's future in those packages. I met a man nicknamed Cucaracha, the cockroach, who showed me the routes and contacts. He was useful until he wasn't. In my world, people are stepping stones. By 1976, I was already establishing what would become the largest criminal organization in history. But I made mistakes. I got arrested. Me and my cousin Gustavo Gaviria, my right hand, my strategic mind, the brother life gave me, were detained bringing a load from Ecuador. That was my first and only official prisoner photo the world would see for a long time. If you look at that photo, the famous mugshot, you'll see I'm not crying, I'm not looking down, I'm smiling. I looked at the camera and smiled. Why? Because I knew that was temporary. I knew that no judge, no cop, no system was stronger than my money and my will. I tried to bribe the judges. When that didn't work, I understood I needed to level up the game. The two DS, Administrative Department of Security agents who arrested me, were killed. The case was shelved. The lesson was learned by everyone. No one touches Pablo Escobar and lives to tell the tale. That consolidated my reputation. Fear started running through the streets of Medellín faster than the drug itself. Back then, I already had my wife, Tata, Maria Victoria Henao. I married her when she was just 15 and I was 26. She was my refuge, my unconditional loyalty in a world of betrayal. Despite all my mistresses, all the parties, she was the only woman who truly mattered, the mother of my children, Juan Pablo and Manuela. Everything I built, I told myself it was for them, so they would never have to bow their heads to anyone. In the late 70s, the business exploded. I wasn't driving trucks anymore. I was buying planes. I bought an island in the Bahamas, Norman's Cay, through Carlos Leda, a brilliant madman who admired Hitler and John Lennon at the same time. Later revolutionized transportation. Instead of mules swallowing condoms with drugs, we started sending small planes, flying low over the ocean to escape American radars. Each flight brought back millions of dollars in cold, hard cash. The money started coming in quantities I couldn't launder. I bought farms, buildings, taxi companies, but the volume was obscene. That was when I realized I needed organization. I couldn't do it all alone. I needed partners, not competitors. I gathered the Ochoa brothers, Jorge Luis, Juan David, and Fabio, who came from a respected family of horse breeders and had connections. I gathered Gonzalo Rodriguez Gacha, El Mexicano, a violent man, in love with Mexican culture and loyal to the death. We formed an alliance. We split routes, shared transport costs, coordinated bribes. Without signing a single paper, without lawyers, we created a multinational corporation. The world would come to know this alliance as the Medellín Cartel. But for us, it was just the company. And the CEO of that company was me. In this phase, I started to feel that money wasn't enough. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be respected, not just as a rich man, but as a benefactor. I started looking at the poor neighborhoods of Medellín, those places forgotten by God and the government, places like the Moravia garbage dump where people lived on top of trash. I saw myself in those dirty children. And I decided that if the government wouldn't do anything for them, Pablo Escobar would. I started building soccer fields, turning on lights in the neighborhoods, putting cash in the hands of widows. They started calling me Robin Hood Paisa. Those looks of gratitude, that was a drug more potent than cocaine. I was on top of the world, or at least on the solid foundation that would take me there. I had the people's loyalty, the police's fear, and control of the most valuable product on the market. I was ready for the next step, the step that would be my glory and my ruin: politics. I wanted to get into Congress. I wanted legitimacy. I didn't know that by trying to enter Colombian society through the front door, I would be signing my death warrant and declaring war on the whole world. But at that moment, looking at the Medellín Valley from my Hacienda Nápoles, which I was starting to build, filling with exotic animals and unthinkable luxuries, I felt invincible. The son of the peasant and the teacher had become the king, and the reign was just beginning. In the early 80s, I wasn't just living, I was reigning. My crown jewel was Hacienda Nápoles. I bought 3,000 hectares of land in the heat of Magdalena Medio and turned it into Eden. I didn't just want a farm, I wanted an independent state. I had roads built, airstrips, artificial lakes, and gigantic pools, and of course the zoo. I brought Africa to Colombia. Elephants, giraffes, rhinos, zebras, and the famous hippos. I watched those beasts walking under the Colombian sun and felt there were no limits to my will. At the entrance of the farm, I had the small single-engine Piper plane installed, the one I used on my first cocaine trip to the United States. It was a reminder. Never forget how it all started. There at Nápoles, we partied like Roman emperors. Politicians, actresses, beauty queens, soccer players, everyone came to kiss the ring. Money flowed like water. But deep down, something bothered me. Money bought things, bought people, but it didn't buy the respect of the traditional elite in Bogotá. Those old men with aristocratic last names saw me as new money, a lucky peasant, a bandit. I decided I would force them to accept me. I would be a politician. I created the Civismo en Marcha movement. I launched the Medellín sin tugurios, Medellín without slums program. I went where the government never stepped. In the Moravia dump, I saw families living in filth among rats and disease. I promised them dignity. I built an entire neighborhood, hundreds of brick and cement houses, and gave the keys for free to those people. I named the place Barrio Pablo Escobar. When I walked through there, women wept and tried to touch my clothes as if I were a saint. The church criticized me, the government feared me, but the people loved me. With that popular base, I entered formal politics. I allied myself with Jairo Ortega, and we secured a seat in the House of Representatives under the new liberalism movement. I was the alternate, but I was the one calling the shots. In 1982, on the day of my inauguration, I walked into the National Congress without a tie, defying protocol, defying everyone. I sat in those velvet chairs where laws were made and thought, I've arrived. Now, I am untouchable. But I was wrong. Politics is a sewer filthier than drug trafficking. In the drug trade, if someone betrays you, you kill them. In politics, they smile at you while stabbing you in the back with newspapers and speeches. There was a man, the Minister of Justice, Rodrigo Lara Bonilla, a man of the elite, arrogant, who decided his life's mission was to destroy me. He started speaking publicly about hot money, infiltrating politics. He pointed the finger at me. I tried to defend myself, said I was a businessman in real estate and livestock. But then the newspaper El Espectador, run by Guillermo Cano, dug up my past. They found that damn photo from my arrest in 1976, the photo where I was smiling. Suddenly it didn't matter how many houses I had built. I was exposed. The humiliation was public and brutal. The new liberalism movement, led by Luis Carlos Galan, kicked me out. Lara Bonilla humiliated me in Congress. I lost my seat. I lost my immunity. The Bogotá elite laughed at the upstart peasant. On that day, leaving Congress with cameras in my face and rage burning in my chest, innocence ended. They didn't want peace. They wanted war. And I would give them a war that would make the country tremble. I told my partners in the cartel, Lara Bonilla is going to die. It wasn't just revenge. It was a message. On April 30th, 1984, two kids on a motorcycle, the first motorized sicarios, a tactic I popularized, pulled up alongside the minister's car in northern Bogotá. A burst from a submachine gun silenced the voice of morality. The assassination of a sitting minister of justice changed everything. The Colombian state, which until then pretended not to see the size of the monster, woke up in panic. President Belisario Betancourt declared war on the drug traffickers, and the worst weapon they had wasn't tanks or helicopters. It was one word: extradition. The extradition treaty with the United States was my nightmare. I wasn't afraid of Colombian justice. Here, I could buy judges, threaten witnesses, or turn prison into a luxury hotel. But in the United States, in a cold 2x2-meter cell, not speaking the language, far from my family, far from my power, that was death in life. It was then that I coined the phrase that would become the motto of an entire generation of traffickers. We prefer a grave in Colombia to a cell in the United States. We formed a clandestine group, Los Extraditables. We signed communiques threatening anyone who supported extradition. We started killing judges. We started killing cops. But we needed refuge. We fled to Panama. There I negotiated with the dictator Manuel Noriega. He charged us millions for protection, but that place was too small for me. I missed my land, my food, my people. I tried one last negotiation with the Colombian government. I offered to pay Colombia's external debt, yes, the entire country's debt, in exchange for amnesty and the end of extradition. They refused. Their honor was too expensive. So we went back to Colombia, and the violence escalated to levels of madness. The hunt began. Colonel Jaime Ramirez Gomez and the DEA started destroying my labs. In Tranquilandia, they found an industrial cocaine complex in the jungle. Tons of powder, planes, airstrips. It was $1 billion blow. They were taking my money, so I would take their peace. In 1985, the Supreme Court of Justice was analyzing the constitutionality of the extradition treaty. I needed to stop that. They say I financed the guerrilla group M19 to take the Palace of Justice. What can I say? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The M19 stormed the palace. The army responded with tanks. The building caught fire. More than 100 people died, including 11 Supreme Court magistrates. And conveniently, the files on extradition turned to ash. Was it an act of barbarism? Yes. But did it work? Partially. The message was delivered. There is no sanctuary, there is no law that protects us, and there is no law that attacks us. The country was bleeding, and me? I was living like a ghost, moving between farms, surrounded by sicarios, always with a radio communicator in hand, listening to police frequencies. My family suffered. Tata lived in fear. My children couldn't go to school, but I justified everything. I'm fighting for our freedom. They want to sell us to the gringos. The press kept attacking me. Guillermo Cano from El Espectador was relentless. He wrote editorials demanding my head. He thought the pen was mightier than the sword. In December 1986, I showed him he was wrong. I killed Cano outside his newspaper office. If you write against me, you die. If you judge against me, you die. If you legislate against me, you die. The Medellín Cartel was no longer just a drug company. We were an insurgency, and I was no longer just a trafficker. I was the most feared man in the world. But fear brings loneliness. I started seeing betrayal everywhere. My partners started questioning my methods. The war was costing dearly, not just in money, but in blood. And blood attracts sharks. The Cali cartel, the clean-cut gentlemen from the south, started conspiring against us. They were discreet, corporate, and hated the noise I made. While I blew up bombs, they bought banks. The war between Medellín and Cali was about to begin, and it would be a bloodbath. But before that, I would make the Colombian state kneel once and for all. I would initiate the era of pure narco-terrorism, car bombs, elite kidnappings, fear on the street corners. I would turn Medellín, the city of eternal spring, into the murder capital of the world. I was willing to burn the entire country down to avoid being extradited. My soul? By that point, I had already sold it, sliced it up, and distributed it. I looked in the mirror and saw a survivor. The world saw a demon. Maybe both were right. If until 1988 I was a problem for Colombia, in 1989 I became its apocalypse. That was the year I decided there were no limits to what I would do to bend the will of the state. Fear was my currency, and I was about to cause inflation. Luis Carlos Galán. That name echoed in my head like an omen of death. He was the favorite to win the presidential elections. He shouted from the rooftops that he would expel the drug traffickers and approve definitive extradition. He was the hope of decent Colombia, and for that reason, he was my death sentence. I couldn't allow him to reach the palace of Nariño. On August 18, 1989, during a rally in Soacha, my men infiltrated the crowd. Shots rang out. Galán fell. The country cried, but I breathed a sigh of relief, or so I thought. Galán's death didn't stop the persecution, it accelerated it. The government, now led by César Gaviria, Galán's successor, declared total war. They started confiscating my properties, arresting my family members. I responded with dynamite. It was then that I committed the act that would stain my soul forever, if there was anything left of it. My informant said César Gaviria would be on Avianca Flight 203, going from Bogotá to Cali. I needed to eliminate the successor. I gave the order. A young man, deceived, boarded the plane with a briefcase, thinking he was carrying a recorder for a spy mission. Inside, there were plastic explosives. On November 27, 1989, the plane exploded over Soacha. 107 people on board died. But fate, with its macabre sense of humor, played a trick on me. Gaviria didn't board. I killed 107 innocent people, fathers, mothers, children, to kill a man who was safe in his office. That day, even those who defended me in the slums fell silent. I had crossed a sacred line. I wasn't a rebel anymore. I was a monster. I didn't stop there. A week later, I detonated a truck bomb with 500 kilos of dynamite in front of the DAS, Administrative Department of Security building in Bogotá. The explosion was so violent it opened a crater 10 meters deep. 70 people died. Hundreds were injured. Bogotá looked like Beirut. The government offered million-dollar rewards for my head. I responded by offering rewards for the heads of police officers. In Medellín, 2 million pesos were paid for every dead cop. My sicarios, boys of 15, 16 years old from the comunas, started hunting cops on street corners as if it were a sport. Blood washed the streets of Medellín daily, but bombs weren't working to change the law. I needed something more personal. I changed tactics. I started kidnapping the elite, the notables. I kidnapped Diana Turbe, daughter of a former president, Francisco Santos from the El Tiempo newspaper clan, Maruja Patrón. I kept them in cold, damp captivity. They were my bargaining chips. The message was clear to the oligarchy. Pressure the government to ban extradition, or your sons and daughters will die. The strategy, as cruel as it was, worked. The country was exhausted. Fear won. In 1991, a constituent assembly was called to rewrite the constitution, and there, between the lines of Colombia's new supreme law, was written the article I so desired: the extradition of native Colombians is prohibited. I had won. On June 19, 1991, I turned myself in, but I didn't turn myself in like a common prisoner. I dictated the rules of my surrender. I wasn't going to a government prison. I would build my own. I chose a plot of land in the mountains of Envigado, overlooking my beloved Medellín, and built La Catedral. The world called it a prison. I called it a fortress. From the outside, it looked like a penitentiary with fences and guards, but the guards were chosen by me. Inside, Inside was a country club. I had suites with fireplaces, king-size beds, jacuzzis. There was a game room with billiard tables, a full bar, a disco. I built a professional soccer field and invited the best players from the Colombian national team to play matches with me. Rionegro came to visit me. We threw parties with women, alcohol and excesses that lasted for days. I was locked up, but I had never been so free. From La Catedral, I continued running the Medellín Cartel via radio, phone and carrier pigeons. I collected taxes from other traffickers. I received visits from mayors, lawyers and partners. My family came up on weekends for barbecues. I had humiliated the Colombian state to the point of making them pay for my security while I continued to traffic. But absolute power corrupts absolutely. And paranoia is the disease of kings. I started distrusting my own lieutenants. Fernando Galeano and Kiko Moncada, two of my most loyal partners, ran the business outside the prison while I was inside. I started hearing rumors that they were stealing money, that they were hiding profits. Their greed offended mine. I called them for a meeting at La Catedral. They came up. Confident. They never went back down. Inside my prison, under state protection, I ordered my sicarios to handle it. Their bodies were destroyed and disappeared right there. That was my biggest strategic mistake. It wasn't the bomb on the plane. It wasn't the war against the state. It was betrayal against my own. By killing Moncada and Galeano, I broke the mafia's code of honor. Their families and allies swore revenge. I created enemies inside my own house, and the government could no longer ignore it. The news of the murders inside La Catedral leaked. The international humiliation was unbearable for President Gaviria. The charade was over. In July 1992, the army surrounded the mountain. They had orders to transfer me to a real prison, a military base. I saw the trucks coming up. I saw the soldiers getting into position. I knew that if they took me, I would end up on a plane to the United States the next week. I looked at my men and said, "We're leaving." The escape was ridiculously easy. I designed that prison. I knew every blind spot. While the vice ministers walked in the front door to negotiate, I walked out the back. Breaking through a plaster wall I had purposely ordered to be weak. With the mountain fog covering our tracks, me and a handful of loyal men went down the slope. Walking through the damp forest, leaving luxury behind and returning to the mud, was free again. But this time it was different. I no longer had the fortress. I no longer had the absolute loyalty of all the traffickers. I had the Colombian state, the DEA, the CIA, and worst of all, Los Pepes, people persecuted by Pablo Escobar, behind me. Los Pepes was an unholy alliance between the Cali cartel, right-wing paramilitaries, and former partners of mine whom I had betrayed, like the Moncada and Galeano families. They didn't want to arrest me. They wanted to exterminate me, and they played dirty, just as dirty as I did. They started killing my lawyers, my accountants, my stable hands. They burned down my family's homes. They were dismantling my empire, brick by brick, body by body. The year 1993 began with the smell of gunpowder and desperation. I was cornered. I moved from house to house every 2 days. I slept with one eye open. My multi-billion-dollar fortune couldn't buy a single minute of peace. I tried desperately to get my family out of the country. I sent them to Germany, but the Colombian government applied pressure and they were sent back on the same plane. Seeing my wife and children crying on television, being treated like criminals, broke what was left of my heart. I was alone. The most powerful man in the world was now just a tired fugitive, unshaven, belly-growing, hiding in middle-class houses in Medellín, waiting for the end to come. But I still had the phone, and the phone would be my undoing. December 1993. The month that should have been for celebration was for me an early funeral. I was hiding in a modest 2-story house in the Los Olivos neighborhood, a middle-class area in Medellín. No farms, no zoos, no luxury. Just me, my bodyguard Álvaro de Jesús Agudelo, Limón, and the deafening silence of defeat. I was sick, tired, and incredibly alone. The hunt by Los Pepes had decimated my organization. They killed my lawyers, my accountants, my childhood friends. The search block, trained by the Americans, scoured every inch of the Abara Valley with technology I couldn't fight. Radio triangulation. They were tracking my calls. I knew it. I always knew the phone was my weapon and my trap. The golden rule was never speak for more than 3 minutes. But on December 2nd, my 44th birthday, I broke the rule. The longing was a physical pain. I wanted to hear the voice of my daughter Manuela. I wanted to speak to my son Juan Pablo. I wanted to be a father just for a few moments, forgetting I was the monster the world wanted to slaughter. I called them. They were trapped in a hotel in Bogotá, surrounded by the government. I spoke about the future, a future I knew I wouldn't see. The call lasted too long, long enough for the search block's needle to drop right on the roof of my house. I hung up the phone and felt something in the air, a heavy silence. Then the sound of boots, trucks screeching to a halt, and the shout, "Police!" They kicked down the reinforced door. Limon was the first to react, jumping out the window onto the back roof. He fell right there. No chance. I ran. I, the man who commanded armies, was now running barefoot, in jeans and a blue t-shirt pulled up over my belly. Clutching my pistols like useless talismans, I jumped out the window. The afternoon sun hit the clay tiles. I saw the Medellín sky one last time. Below in the alley and on the street, dozens of officers pointed their rifles. The shooting started. I felt the impact in my leg. I fell. I tried to get up, but another shot hit me. The pain was sharp but brief. Then, the end. There are many versions of who fired the fatal shot. Colonel Hugo Aguilar says it was him. The Americans say it was their snipers. But I always said, I prefer a grave in Colombia. And I always told my men that if we were caught, the last bullet was for ourselves. Look at the autopsy. The wound was in the head. Maybe I gave myself the mercy shot. Maybe they executed me. In the end, it doesn't matter. At 2:56 p.m., the heart of Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria stopped. My body lay sprawled on the roof. The police, euphoric, posed next to my corpse like big game hunters on a safari, smiling, holding my guns. That photo traveled the world. The giant was dead. Colombia breathed a sigh of relief. The nightmare was over. But was it? My funeral was the proof of my contradiction. While the elite toasted with champagne in Bogotá, thousands of poor people surrounded my coffin in Medellín. They cried, shouted, "Viva Pablo," tried to touch the glass of the hearse. To them, I wasn't the terrorist. I was the man who gave them a roof when the state turned its back on them. This blind loyalty was my greatest creation and my greatest sin. I bought their souls with crumbs from my blood-stained fortune. Now, speaking from eternity, I look at the legacy I left behind, and the view isn't pretty. I wasn't a hero. I was a cancer. I taught an entire generation of Colombians that honest work is for fools. I created the trafficker culture, the idea that success is measured by the thickness of the gold chain around your neck, the size of the gun at your waist, and the amount of silicone in the women by your side. I destroyed the values of a nation. Young men who could have been engineers or doctors became sicarios and died before they were 20, dreaming of being like me. And drug trafficking? Did my death end it? No. It just democratized it. When I fell, the monopoly ended. The Cali cartel took over for a while, but soon they fell too. The business fragmented into hundreds of cartelitos, harder to track, more invisible. Learn this. As long as there is a nose eager for powder up north, there will be someone willing to kill to supply it down south. I was just the pioneer, the CEO who showed it was possible. Today, Mexican cartels apply the tactics I invented, but with a cruelty that would make even me shudder. The business didn't die, it evolved. I caused the death of over 4,000 people. Brilliant judges, honest cops, brave journalists, plain passengers, innocent bystanders killed in attacks. I left thousands of orphans and widows. That blood doesn't dry. It stains Colombia's history forever. My war against the state cost billions and set back my country's development by decades. Today, I see my face printed on t-shirts, on car stickers, in TV series that portray me as a charismatic genius. Young people in Europe and the United States use my image as a symbol of rebellion. They don't know what they're saying. They haven't lived the terror of not knowing if the car next to them is going to explode. Romanticizing my life is spitting on my victims' graves. I had everything: money, power, women, adoration, and I ended up barefoot, dirty, dead on a roof, with the world celebrating my departure. My family was persecuted, humiliated, and had to change their names to survive. My fortune was confiscated or stolen by enemies. What was left? Nothing but ruins and horror stories. That was my life. A meteoric rise and a dizzying fall. I was living proof that crime pays, yes, and it pays very well, but it charges interest that no one can afford. The final bill is your soul. I am Pablo Escobar, and this was my story. My story is a brutal reminder of the consequences of unbridled ambition and the absence of moral limits. It is an open wound that teaches us that power built on violence is inevitably ephemeral and destructive. If you made it this far, it's because you value deep stories and documentaries that aren't afraid to show the raw truth. The production of this content required rigorous research to bring every detail of the life of history's biggest drug lord. If this video impacted you, if you learned something new today, please smash that like button. It helps our channel continue bringing high-quality documentaries. Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next biography. We're going to explore the lives of men who toppled empires. I was Pablo Escobar, and now I ask you, did the end of the Medellín Cartel really change the war on drugs, or did it just change the players? Leave your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching. See you in the next story.